Well, for more, we can cross now to Strasbourg to speak with our Europe editor, Nicholson. Catherine, what exactly are we expecting to hear in this speech?
Well, this really is an essential visit for President Macron. As you said, he's taking over the rotating presidency of the EU Council with his government for the next 6 months, which means that he and that government will be shepherding EU policy making, not writing the rules, but shepherding it through and pushing some of their priorities higher up the agenda. The EU Parliament, the only directly elected body in the European Union, is a key part in policy making. They get to amend and vote on laws put forward by the Commission. So he'll be telling those policymakers the sorts of things he wants to be talking about. Some key issues include issues around EU borders. Those have really come to the fore in recent weeks, for example, with the situation on the Belarus border with EU states. Also issues about internal borders within the EU. President Macron wants more possibility to be able to suspend those borders, perhaps in times of terrorist crisis or health crisis. And we know that as well is a key issue in France with the presidential election coming up. Something else that's really important, and you're going to hear a lot of, not just today, but in the next few months, is something called strategic autonomy. France very keen for the EU to stand on its own 2 feet a lot more, partly in terms of trade and the kind of goods it produces and buys in from other countries, very aware of a trade imbalance with giants such as China, but also in terms of security and defence, really wanting to push the EU into having a more defence cooperation.
And Catherine, today's speech in Strasbourg coincides with crisis talks in Kiev over the build-up of thousands of Russian troops along the Ukrainian border. Are we expecting Emmanuel Macron to touch on that today?
Yes, I think that this situation on the Ukraine-Russia border really is quite a perfect example of why Emmanuel Macron has been talking about this defence situation for such a long time and why he wants this greater defence autonomy for EU states. Macron basically is arguing that EU states that are already members of NATO, not all of them are, but most, they can and should remain members of NATO. But he wants the 27 EU states as a whole to have a defence and a security strategy together, and he wants to strengthen what he calls a European pillar within NATO. EU states are already involved in joint procurement of defence equipment, for example, among themselves, but Macron and a growing number of other EU leaders now want this to go further, looking at joint operations, for example. One of the reasons behind this is that Macron and many other voices in Europe really see that the United States, the traditional guarantor of peace and security in Europe, is turning away from Europe somewhat, certainly looking much more towards the Pacific. Macron, we know, felt particularly burned and scorned when he saw the United States, UK and Australia as having set up their AUKUS alliance, essentially behind France's back. He's actually got quite a lot of support around Europe for these ideas, and certainly, as you say, that military build-up on the Russia-Ukraine border is making this a very present issue for many minds here in the European Parliament.
Nicholson in Strasbourg, thank you very much.